do have to tell you guys, with y'all up here, Stephanie and Drew last night had never had anyone come up to the stage like this. And she was like, we felt so loved. So you know what? It's the crowd that brings out the speaker.
Amen.
You know, your excitement, your response, people can feel that. And so they give more. So you guys are awesome. So
Yes,
thank
you are.
you.
Yes, you are. All right.
Thank you.
I felt like a WEF wrestler coming out of the tunnel and everybody's fired up. You know, that's good stuff. All right, buddy. All right. Okay. Good deal. Thank you so much. We felt so welcome already. And this is just so fun to be with you guys. And so many people I saw backstage we hadn't seen in years. It's like a big reunion. It's so fun. And we are honored to be here tonight. Why don't you start off and then we'll just kind of kick it off. And
did you want the picture up or wait till after?
Yeah, let's do that. Why don't you introduce the family?
So you guys have a picture of our family. If you'll go ahead and put that up.
There you are.
This was our Christmas picture this year that I never actually got sent out. Danny actually texts people with it instead of me sending out cards. But this is our family who we love so much. So thankful for everyone in that picture.
Tell them who they are.
Okay, so.
It's probably right.
Oh, right here. There we go. So on the front, we've got Poppy, then Nixon, then Sydney.
Explain whose family, who goes with who.
Okay. Nick and Stacy are on the left with Poppy and Nixon. Nick is her husband behind her, and you see Louie on Danny's lap. In front of Louie is Sydney, who is our 24-year-old. And then on my shoulder is Griffin. Her twin brother is beside her. Then Sibby in the back, Drew, Steph, Sailor, and then Sterling in the front. And the dog's name is Buckets.
Sailor, our oldest granddaughter, Drew has gotten her hooked on playing basketball. In fact, he's their middle school basketball coach. And so far this year, they're undefeated. And he thinks he's the Coach K of middle school basketball, okay?
It's a homeschool team, so he doesn't work for a school or anything. It's a homeschool team that he does, but he pours everything into it. And honestly, I think it's one of his favorite things to do.
Yeah, because they're crushing like really expensive private schools they're playing against where people pay
and he is loving
lots of money. And they're like, oh, this is the homeschool crowd. And they're coming in and beating them by 30 points. And he's got plays and stuff. You know, he'll run a defense and start smoking them where they can't even get the ball up court, do a full court press or a full court trap or half court trap. And the other coach will call a timeout and give them a solution to beat, and he'll just change the defense, and then they'll go to man, and he changes it all up, and they're just crushing it. And so Drew is so.
He'll wake up in the middle of the night and say, Steph, I've got a new play. The Lord has just showed me something else to beat the next thing.
He's always said, the Lord just downloaded something last night for me to teach and talk about. And now he's going, hey, Steph, the Lord just downloaded some new plays for the team now. So he's all into it. But yeah, that's our family. And real quickly, Nixon right there on the front, he's 7 years old. And I just heard that Emmy is 7 years old. So they're going to be best buddies growing up together and seeing each other from time to time, different events. But he's my little buddy. He's the first boy born on my side of the family in 59 years since I was a boy. It was like the estrogen ocean, nothing but girls for years, okay? And so now he's my little buddy. They all call Renata, they call her Maz, and they call me Chief. And they said, you're too young to seem like a grandpa, so we go call you Chief. And so he comes into my office and he sits down at my desk and he goes, okay, Chief, what have you learned today? You know, and I've been teaching him math and equations and about investing. And so he's saving silver coins. And he'll goes, how's our silver doing today? And I said, well, it's about the same. He goes, man, this is taking forever. And so it's funny. He said, Renata overheard him and Poppy, his sister, which is down there on the left. Anyway, Poppy, they were talking the other day and he was like, Chief told me that appreciation means something goes up in value. And she said, well, Mom taught me that appreciation means that you're thankful. And he goes, yeah, but Chief knows what he's talking about. She said, well, Mommy does too. And they were arguing about what appreciation means. And I said, I've never thought about that. Well, same word means both things, you know. So it's so fun. And we'll tell our story tonight, but one of our dreams, and we're going to talk about building a legacy. And you met Stephanie and Drew last night. And we're so proud of them. Nick and Stacy are one of their platinum legs, and then Sydney's registered in the business and helps run our functions and things like that. So the family is all in, and we're so thankful for that because we wanted to build something that we could all stay together long term. And if kids grow up and do other things, that's totally fine. But being around this environment does so much to influence their life and their choices. They'll know how to pick their friends. They'll know how to pick the people they associate with. They'll get some foundation in their life. And so, as Stephanie said last night, we've just raised them around the business to be part of the business, help serve access to the team and whatever, have little team meetings and gatherings and things like that. And we've always talked about our family business. And we've never talked about we're going to build the business. We talked about it being a family business. And so they've embraced that. And the answer to prayer is that Drew and Nick married into the family, and they fully embraced it also. And we actually went in together and we bought property, and we have gated, and we have our own little community. There's nobody else in there, and we built houses next to each other. And so the kids just go back and forth. We don't even have to lock the doors. They just run in and out of the house, and Maz is teaching the girls how to cook, and it's just a blessing. It's so fun. And that was a dream that we had from way back. And so we're experiencing that now, and we love it. So we're going to first of all, we want to thank you guys because we are honored to be invited. We've seen so many old friends. Now, a lot of you guys on the Shaw team, the Spartan team, I know your faces, but I cannot repeat your name, okay? And just forgive me, I'm an old Southern boy. I can remember Raj because it's 4 letters, okay? And we go back for years. In fact, I remember at a big event where they award you with when you hit certain levels in the business, we were playing golf. And, we were playing together and riding together in the cart. And I just started talking about playing golf and all, and then, telling about a club that we're a member of in Raleigh that was built in like 1967, and it's got 2 courses, and I was talking about beautiful. And he's just sitting there, he's so polite, and he's so nice. And then in the conversation, he started telling me about that he's a member and lives at the Sugarloaf, the TPC course in Atlanta. And I'm like, wait a minute, you live on Sugarloaf? He said, yeah, 17th green. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And so then we're riding a little longer, and we just got back. Nick and Drew and I went to Peru, and we hiked Machu Picchu. This is in 2014. That's a once in a lifetime experience. I did it once, never want to do it again, okay? I've got the t-shirt, got the memories, but I'm telling you, that was a tough hike. And I was talking to him about it and getting in training and getting ready for it, and lost like 33 pounds so I could go up above 11,000 feet and still have my wind and all. He's just sitting there just so polite. And he goes, yeah, I started hiking this year too. I said, oh, you did? And I'm thinking, hike from the golf cart over to look for your ball in the woods. That's about as far as I'd ever hiked before that. He goes, yeah, I just climbed to the base camp of Mount Everest. And I'm like, get out of here. I'm like, come on, man, you keep one-upping me here. And he just laughs. Anyway, we just appreciate all you guys, Raj and Ganesh and all the diamonds back here. And was talking to Chuck last night, and many memories, and a lot of y'all on their team. And then Atish and Pale, they've been our hosts this weekend, and they've been flowing. Yeah, they're awesome.
And they have it going on.
Huh?
They have their business going on.
They had a blast, yeah. In fact, we were going to get a bite to eat lunch today, and the next thing you know, it had been hours we had been sitting there talking, so I hope we didn't wear our welcome out with them because we just had a blast. But it's just so fresh and so neat to be with you guys. And then the Papalardo family, oh my goodness. What can you say? Vinny and Dana and Dennis and Danielle came and spoke at our conference last weekend. And so we kind of traded out, and I think we got the best end of the deal. They were so good.
But Vinny needed to rest.
He needed rest, and he's earned it. I tell you, Vinny works hard for all of us as IBOs, being president of the board. And we're so thankful for them and their story. They had a meeting with our platinums, and they told the full boat, and I'm telling you, they inspired our team. They are true excuse removers, and probably the greatest comeback story I've ever heard since I've been in the business for 42 years. And we're just so thankful to be friends, and they did such a great job. And then Tony and I, we talk on the phone a lot, and he's my brother, and we just have a great time chatting. In fact, we were a few weeks ago, I was driving back from the beach, and I was by myself, and we hooked up on the phone, and we talked for like 2.5 hours, just nonstop, just rolling. It was just so fun. And then Dennis and Danielle, they were amazing last weekend. And what was funny is at our platinum meeting, Jeannie and Dana were sitting there talking, and Dana, he'd be talking, and she's just rubbing his back.
Stephanie told us last night,
Yeah, I'm
remember?
gonna tell him again because I'll tell my version of it. And she would just rub his hand, and then she'd say something. He'd reach over and just kind of put his hand on her, and all the guys in the room, we were like, "Oh my goodness," And one of our guys, one of our platinums, he was sitting there kind of doing like this, trying to get his wife to, why don't you give me a little rub, And and then when Dennis and Danielle came out on stage, they were talking, and she was rubbing his back, and all the guys were like, "I thought I had a dream, but I got a whole new dream now," okay, And that's to have an Italian wife, okay? Because she's up there talking, and next thing you know, she puts her head over my shoulder, and I just melted. I was like, 46 years of marriage, I'm still waiting for that night, okay? So come on, baby, Paul Prophet up here. Oh, yeah! So they absolutely built our dream in more ways than one last weekend. And so we just thank you guys for being there and giving and serving. And we love you guys. We love this family. And saw little Emmy when I got here last night, and what a cutie. It is so fun isn't it fun to just be with people that are like-minded, have a purpose, and are driven to do something that matters in your life. And wow, and that's what you're a part of. That's what you're a part of. Our first conference was 2 weeks into the business, and I'd listened to probably 30 audios in that first 2 weeks, which is a tip. If you're an upline, you need to be supplying these new apprentices with audios because you can't starve the baby. One thing that Larry and Pam Winters did for us, what that Larry did for me, is immediately, because he saw I would listen to audios and I was hungry, I'd listen to about 10 of them. There were cassettes back then. There were these little things, plastic things with little spools in them for those of you who are, young like me and just MP3 downloads and stuff. But he would give me a stack of cassettes, and I would just listen and absorb it. And I said, I need some more. And I'd probably listen to 30 of them before our first conference 2 weeks into the business. And I went to the conference just praying that this was the real deal, because I was so tired of what I was doing. And we'll cover our story tonight, but that weekend, it was what I dreamed of and prayed for, and even more, because I saw people that were working together, unified, no big egos, everybody working together for the betterment of everybody. And we went through the whole weekend from the start on Friday night all the way through Sunday afternoon. We didn't miss anything. And by that end of that weekend, I knew this is what we're going to do with the rest of our life. And we've not backed down. We've had times where it wasn't working and we would get frustrated, but you know what? We don't quit. And Stephanie said it last night. Motto in our home has always been "Snipes don't quit." And they do have in their family room in the basement, big, like a mural on the wall, "Tidwells don't quit," because they're teaching their kids the same legacy to not quit. Because you'll go through valleys, but you don't lay down and take a nap and camp in the valley or talk about the valley. You keep your eye on the prize, and when you make it out on the other side, because you've gone through a test and you stood the test. See, if you quit in the valley, if you quit in the test, okay, nobody cares. You know why? Because they're thinking about their own life. So many people love to just, how you been doing? Oh, and they start dumping everything in their life like somebody actually cares. You're sorry you even asked the question, okay? But here's the thing. If you make it through the test, now you've got a testimony. And you can share it, and it helps raise belief that other people can, and you're doing something for them. So I'm just telling you, you'll have tests. All right, but if you'll just stick with it, you'll make it through, and you'll have a testimony that will inspire others. And that's what you've got in your leaders. And we're just honored and thankful to be here with you guys this weekend and share. So we got some fun tonight. So why don't you kick it off?
So, Danny and Renata Snipes from Raleigh, North Carolina. We have lived in Raleigh our whole lives. We were born there and have stayed there. And Danny was working at a dealership, and Larry came and got a job there.
Why don't you tell them about high school when you treated me so bad and things like that? Because I made it through that valley. It's a testimony for me now.
Oh, everyone get out your violins and just start. Poor thing. Made him strong.
Yeah. You guys, this is my cougar, okay? She was one grade ahead of me in school, and I just was sitting in like algebra class, and I would just stare at her. They hadn't invented the word stalker back then, but I was a stalker because I would just look at her. I could care less about school. I wanted to play sports and get her somehow to date me. And so I tell people I chased her all the way through high school, and then when she graduated and she went to 1 year of college and I wasn't around chasing her, that's when she really appreciated what a valuable man that she was turning into. Right? Yeah, so I chased her all through high school, and then she finally caught me. So anyway,
Larry and Pam, Larry showed Danny the business, and immediately he caught what it could provide for us. Me, not so much, but
because you hadn't really seen it.
I hadn't really seen it. But the biggest thing is I always knew that we were going to do something, but we didn't know what to do. We were 24, 25 years old, but we really didn't know what to do. What he wanted to get out of the car business, obviously, but we just had no idea what could provide for us and what could be a good living, what could be something that we could succeed in and everything. And so when we saw the business, I didn't actually get on board until that first conference, 2 weeks after we got in the business. And it was because I heard the struggle victory stories.
Yep.
Those were so important for me. And I saw strong women, and I'm like, my personality is more quiet and everything, but I was like, I want to be a strong woman. I want to be someone who can go after something and obtain it. One of the best books to me is The Magic of Thinking Big. And, I just think it teaches you how not to settle, not to be average. And that's what we saw in the business.
You didn't want to be a strong woman because her temperament is service, and she's, quiet.
My love language is service.
Love language is service, but she wanted to be a strong woman.
Yeah.
Right? Not a. She wanted to be a woman of strength.
Strength, yes.
Okay, because so many times strong women turn strong guys off. And the last thing you want to do is turn the guys off, because sometimes those are the chargers in your business. So just be a woman of strength,
Right.
and be an inspiration.
And I just think that's what this business is full of. It's women who are women of strength, who are out there growing and becoming and knowing what they can achieve. And
Pam.
yeah, Pam is a perfect example.
Our sponsors, Larry and Pam Winters, we didn't say that, they're our personal sponsors. When we got started, their business was very, very small. And I think Larry was a fake 1,500 or something like that. And Pam was still where Larry talks about how shy she was really, really that shy, for real. But Renata and her just kind of connected like sisters. And so it's been such a thing now. We've been in business together for over 40 years. And think about that for a minute. I remember when we got started in the business, I heard that Rich DeVos and Jay Van Andel had been in business in a partnership for 25 years. And I'd never heard of anything like that. I'd heard about people going in business, but at some point they would fracture. And 25 years, and they were still friends and had built a business worth hundreds of millions of dollars, $1 billion. And I was like, that was interesting. I'd never heard of it before. And now to look back today, and Larry and Pam, Renata and I have been in business together, and friends and business partners. And we've not always seen things eye to eye, but here's what we've got as a foundation where we want to do something with our life that impacts people. And that's bigger than our feelings and our feelings getting hurt and our disagreements. So we're always able to walk it out and talk it out. And we're just so thankful for all they've done in our life. But
the business has taught us so much. I mean, it's taught us how to communicate with people, how to work on bringing out the best in people, how to bring out the best in ourselves, not just other people, but in ourselves also.
Yep.
So, there's so much more that you can get from this business instead of just monetary. You can get that, but there's so much more that you can learn to give people and to inspire people. And it's just so important.
Yep, absolutely. We didn't see, when we first got started, Stephanie was 3 months old, and Renata, we were looking for a way for Renata to come home and raise our children. At that point, we just had Stephanie. Now we got 3 daughters and 8 grandkids. But Renata wanted to be able to be a mom to our kids, not, a mortgage payment. Okay. And so we were just trying to figure things out. And that's when Larry came and got a job at the dealership. And he had been there a couple of weeks. I was in automobile sales. She worked for a large hotel chain reservation center. And she had progressed in her job, and she was a supervisor there, and she was proud of that and her accomplishment, and I was too. And I was top salesman at the dealership for years, but it wasn't fulfilling us. There were days when, the weather was bad, there wouldn't be any people coming in to buy a car, and I would be sitting there at the stoplight going home that night. And many times I'd get teary-eyed, and I just think, God, there's got to be something better than this. I just spent 12 hours today, didn't make a dime, and spent time with people that I don't respect and don't have the same values in life or heading in the same direction, but I'm here because I need a dollar bill. And I was like, there's got to be something better. And we didn't know it was this, but boy, we jumped on it when we saw it. And so Larry came and got a job, and I told him about Renata having a baby, and we're just trying to figure out how to have her home, but still be productive because she's very smart and knows, how to do things. And he goes, well, I can tell you about a business that I'm being coached in. And so I was like, sounds interesting. But then pretty quickly I figured out it was the Amway business because we had friends who were great people, and they were like straight A students and smarter than us in school. And we grew up in the same neighborhood and all. And with her, and she married a guy that was like her, and great folks, they got started in the business and invited us to go over and to a meeting and check it out. So we did. And when I left the meeting, Renata wasn't with me. I liked what I saw. I was like, gosh, this looks great. But my brother-in-law, who's 10 years older than me, he had some friends who had done the business, and he started talking me out of it on the way home. And so I never even listened to the audios they loaned me that night, but I watched them for the next 3.5, 4 years. And I just started realizing, my opinion became, it must not work, because if it was going to work, it would work for them. They would go to conferences and things like this. And so when Larry came, got a job at the dealership, and we started talking, and he mentioned about he's been coached and taught about how to build a business from home that he and Pam could do, and Renata and I could do something like that. And I was interested because I didn't have a lot of capitalization to start my own business out there, or anything. We were just young, and all I knew was the car business. My dad was in it for 38 years, and I just kind of grew up. And when I lost my first job because the company shut down, I went to see Dad, and I got hired that day, and I was kind of there working for 11 years on a conversation with the owner of the business. Said, you want to try selling cars? And I said, I'll give it a shot. And so I based our whole future on, I'll give it a shot.
Well, too, we were taught how to be employees.
Yep.
Our parents didn't have their own businesses, and so we didn't know anything about taking charge and taking the bull by its horns and just working at something and building something. And this is the opportunity that came our way.
Yeah, her dad worked for the telephone company. And my dad, as I said, was in the car business. And his dream was to have his own dealership one day. And he got the franchise dealership for a new franchise for Chevrolet in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is where we live. And he was so excited. And I wasn't but about 6 years old. So I vaguely remember it a little bit, them building the building and the property opening and stuff like that. But his partner that he brought on, because my dad didn't like debt and wouldn't go into debt, and so he brought on a partner who had been a friend of his for years. And long story short, that partner cheated him out of his share of the business, which cost him millions of dollars. But from that point on, he told me, he said, listen, Danny, he said, don't worry about going in business for yourself. Just get the highest paying job you can. Let somebody else take the risk. And so that's what then the thought process I was raised with, And fast forward years later, he passed away last year, like 92 years old. And, before he passed away, he had dementia, and we took care of him, which we're thankful we built our business because we were able to do that. But when he was thinking right, you can learn so much listening from people, from their experiences. And I asked him, I said, Dad, I said, that guy cheated you out of your dream and millions of dollars. I said, but I've never heard you say one bad thing about him. He said, yeah, Danny, he said, I just realized that if he was willing to do that to me, he didn't care about me. And so he sure wouldn't care about if I was mad at him or said anything about him. It wouldn't affect him. He said, but I knew it would eat me up on the inside. And he said, so I forgave him, and I've just moved on with my life. And that guy passed away years ago, but my dad lived a long age with no regrets. And so that was one of the great things my dad taught me, is just don't harbor bitterness or hatred, because all it does is eat you up inside. And it's so freeing, because we're going to go through things and people will say things. What amazed me about the business is that people quit because they heard somebody say something from stage. You may never even see them again. They may not even be in your upline, or maybe they are in your upline. But don't be so thin-skinned and so fickle that you let somebody else's opinion or words or anything we say tonight especially offend you to the point that you give up on your dream. And so when people go, well, my upline wasn't good, so we quit. I'm like, well, if you realize they weren't good, then it just taught you how not to be. That's no reason to quit, right? And what I found out and realized over these years, we learned a lot. You always hear, you can't keep a winner from winning, can't keep a quitter from quitting. But I found out that eventually when somebody quits after a long period of time, they really had quit in them in the first place. It just took a while for it to identify itself, right? And there's no quit here. And that's why we made it, not because we're the sharpest and the brightest. There were people who were further along when we got started that we learned from and we're appreciative for. My goodness, the lineage that goes ahead of all of us and the things that they learned and taught and we learned from. You know, Drew and I just got back from speaking in the Czech Republic for the Jaeger organization, who is all of our great granddaddy, you know, who's in heaven now, and Bertie, and their business goes all over the world. And you just realize that people all over the world have hope and they want better for their family. No matter what language they speak or what their background or religious beliefs are, everybody wants the best for their family. And that's something we all have in common. If we can just talk about those things, we can make a better world. Because what's happening now, you know, the talking heads on the media, they're always telling you every bad thing and giving their opinion, and people are just sitting there with their brain knocked in neutral, letting those talking heads program the way they think. Learn how to be an independent thinker and think about free enterprise, and are the decisions that the people who are supposed to be leading us, are they making decisions to make our country better and greater for our grandkids and our kids' kids, or are they trying to tear it apart? And don't vote when you have the freedom and the privilege to vote. Take advantage of it, but just don't vote for a party. Vote for the person and what they stand for. Right? And make sure they support free enterprise and the opportunity that we all have to start a business and build it as big as we want to.
You know, one of those things that I'm so thankful for is that or especially Danny, because he saw the business first, he saw the dream.
Yeah.
He saw there was something inside of every one of you when you were presented with the plan, that there was this bud of a dream that came up. There were people who saw the plan the same night that you saw it, but they didn't catch it. But you did. So you have the responsibility. You have the responsibility and the choice to build this business and to be able to share it with other people so that they can turn around and help other people.
Yep. One of the things they talked about is freedom, being able to control your own calendar. And a lot of people love what they do. And I've met some people here this weekend already that have phenomenal education and background, and you're doing something to make a difference. I mean, I respect doctors, nurses, you know, firemen, policemen, people who served in the military, because they're giving their life to help other people. But I knew selling cars, I was not doing something to change somebody's life except putting them in debt. And I wanted to do something that mattered. I didn't want to just get a paycheck for ever how many years and then pass away and nobody remember. I started to remember hearing people talking about building a legacy and building something that will outlive you. And building a legacy is not just leaving finances to your family. It's putting something in your family, values that they carry on for generations and generations. And so we talk about building a MVP life. You know, you got MVPs on the teams and stuff like that. And I just call it the mission, the vision, and the provision. MVP life. If you have a mission and a vision, the provision will be there. God's not going to tease you with a business that you can't do or don't have the resources to accomplish. You're going to have to go through the struggles, but if you stick it out, he's not going to tease you and go, let's just put a big dream in them and give them just enough to almost make it, but not quite there. I believe he's got full provision for all of us to do things with our life that will impact people and it will outlive us. You know, I used to have goals at the car lot to sell a certain number of cars each month, and got started in the business. And the difference was I saw real quickly the first night I saw the plan that you could build something and get a base or a team started. And then the next month you built on that, and then you built on that, and then you built on that. You weren't going back to zero at the start of every month. I'd have a good month selling cars and they'd give me an attaboy. You know what that is? They'd pat on the back, attaboy, good job, right? Okay. And then they would wipe the board clean and they'd go at it again. And I was tired at 24 years old starting over every month. I knew at 34, 44, 54, I was going to be real tired. At 64, I'd be worn completely out. And I looked at the guys who had been there 10, 15 years longer than me, and I started realizing they're no better off financially than I am at 24 years old, and they've been doing it so much longer. And I started realizing, I remember I heard John Crow say, except for me, there go I. And it's a decision you have to make some changes.
Don't you think that there comes a time when you have to make a big decision on what you're going to do with this business? It may be something that you know is standing in your way and not affording or not making you or not helping you move forward, and you have to make a decision. I'm getting this out of my life. I'm getting this or whatever.
Yeah, well, you know, life is a series of choices, right? We have before us every day life or death, blessing or curses. Choose life so that you and your children can live, right? Because if you choose the curse, if you choose death, if you choose failure, if you choose quitting, what are your kids going to learn from? Oh, my dad, he hauled off and did nothing, right? I wanted my kids to be proud of me. I wanted them to grow up and go, man, the older I get, the more I respect what mom and dad did. And that's one thing that's held our family together. And now they're following in our footsteps because we chose to win. We didn't choose to be just signed up. We chose to win. You know, what does the typical person do in this business or in life? They haul off and do nothing. Because as soon as it gets tough, they're going to quit. They're going to throw in the towel, or they're going to take the easy route every time. You know, and there's never been any statues erected to a critic or a couch potato, right? It's always to the people who don't want to be typical. They want to move above average. And that's where we were. And I'm not putting them down. That's their choice. It's their life. If they choose to not accomplish anything and just, you know, live their life and push up daisies, and 6 months later nobody thinks about them, fine. But see, I started hearing from people who talked about do something with your life. Have a weekly goal, a monthly goal, a yearly goal, a 2-year goal, a 5-year, a 10-year, a 20-year. Have a 50-year goal. Have something that's going to outlast you, something you'll be remembered by. I mean, you look at the leaders who have gone before us, from Rich and Jay and all of our line of sponsorship, and so many of them are already gone and in heaven, but we still talk about them today and the things that we learned from them, and we're thankful for it. And decide that you can do the same thing. You may be 24 like I was the first conference. First of all, welcome to all of you who are apprentices. Don't just take this as a hobby because you didn't have to pay to get started. Nothing is free, and somebody's paying your bill. And they're telling you this. They see enough in you that you have the potential to make it, or they wouldn't invest their time, which is the most precious thing they get, or their financial resources into you if they didn't see potential in you. So thank them, don't take it for granted, and go do something with it. The best way you can thank them is to go build a team and a business so that there's evidence that they made a difference in your life, and your life's going to be changed. If you'll get your eyes on helping your upline accomplish their goals and helping your downline accomplish their goals, all of yours are going to come true. This is so cool. At the car lot, I didn't even want to take lunch because the guy in the booth next to me could catch some of my customers that came in that I got over the weekend, and they came back in during the week to buy the car, and they would snag the guy and sell the car to him. And if they could have got by with it without me ever catching them, they would have got the commission, and I got nothing. I wasn't in competition with just other car manufacturers and other dealerships. I was in competition with the guy in the booth next to me. And in corporate America, everybody's jockeying for the same positions, and they can talk about teamwork and all this stuff, but let it be one position and 3 people are competing for it. They're not talking about teamwork then. It's about me, 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 me. You know, the beauty of this business is we can all succeed. There's 8 billion people on the earth that need what we got. Go ahead.
And in this business, we don't compete, we complement.
Say that again. That's a good statement.
We don't compete, we complement. And, you know, I've seen people, you know, maybe they contacted the same person, and then there's a little bit of, oh, well, I contacted him first. He didn't tell me, blah, blah, blah. Never, ever, ever seen that work out. The person never gets started. The person never does anything. So there's no need to get uptight about who is getting in whose business. We complement each other. We build each other up.
If you just have trust that if you do the work, the right people are going to come into your life. Treat everybody with honor, give them a chance, and the ones that get in, great. The ones that stick, great. The ones that don't get started, fantastic. Saved you time. The ones that quit, hopefully and pray that they learned something while they had the time to associate with you. Be thankful they kept you excited for another day, and just keep looking for the people that are already out there. See, when I started realizing the essence of faith versus hope, I built the business for the first 4.5 years on hope. Just crossed fingers, hoping that I was going to find the people that wanted to do this. Mm-hmm. And finally, one night, I was to the frustration point. After 4.5 years, we were at 1,900 PV, and we had spiked that month, okay? All right? And it wasn't because we were functionaires just going to functions and enjoying the environment. We did that. We were doing something. I put 20 marks on my mirror into an erasable marker, and so I could keep it in front of me all the time. I put 20 little ticky marks up there. And each time that I did a QI or talked to somebody about show the plan, I would wipe a mark off. And my goal was to show it to 20 people a month. Some months I hit it, other months I didn't, but I came real close over a period of time of doing it. Probably averaged about 15 plans a month for like 5 years to go platinum, okay? People got in, people quit. People got in, people quit. And there were points I would get frustrated. But those ticky marks kept me on track. And it also, she'd walk in there and see the marks coming off the mirror, and she knew that I wasn't just talking it, I was walking it. Now, the beauty of the business today, women can talk to people just as good as we could. But back then, somebody had to kind of handle the orders and the products. Everything wasn't online, and then somebody was the communicator and the connector. And so that's the role we took. Well, now, I mean, you don't have to wait for a spouse. If you're a single lady or a single guy, go tear it up, because everything being online, a lot of that administrative work is done for you. If you're a team of husband and wife, both of you, it doesn't just add. When two are in agreement, it multiplies. You can take two Clydesdales and they can pull like 8,000 pounds each. Big horses, you know, the big, like the Budweiser Clydesdales. They say they can pull like 8,000 pounds. And so you hook two together in a harness and you think, well, that would just double their pulling power. They can pull 16,000. No, it multiplies. They say they can pull over 32,000 pounds together. And that's what, when you're married and your spouse and you're together, there's no limits on what can happen. It's the multiplying factor. And great things can happen. Great and greater things than you ever imagined. I believe we have a God that wants to bless us exceedingly abundantly above all that we could ask or think, if we just give him the honor, the glory, and the thanks for it. And he'll bring the people in. And so when I realized that it wasn't a coincidence that Larry came and got a job at a dealership. It wasn't a coincidence that she had had a baby 3 months before and we had a reason or a why. Our gap, as Drew was talking about last night, is I knew there was a gap, because I'd get up in the morning, I'd go to work, and our baby, Stephanie, would be in her crib asleep. I'd get at home at night and she'd be asleep, and I'd go 3 or 4 days and not see her awake. And I knew the gap was I wanted time with my family. My dad was in the car business for 38 years, and he never saw me play but about 5 games. And I played Little League baseball, Pee Wee football, and then baseball, basketball, and football all the way through high school. He was never at the games. Why? Not because he's a bad dad, because he was at work. And I saw myself going down this same path, and I wanted this so much. And so I remember one night, I got on my knees, and I was not to the quitting point, but I was at a frustration point. And I got on my knees and I just closed my eyes and I said, Lord, I don't know what the deal is. I'm doing the work. We're registering people, but it's just not taking traction. And I just said, I just lifted up to you. And it was like on barbells. And I just lifted it up to the Lord. And I said, I'm leaving it with you. And I know you know the people out there tonight that need something or praying for something. And I'm going to ask you to give us that divine intervention and connection where I bump into them at the supermarket, at a gas station, or wherever, and just lead me to the people and I'll do the work. And you know what I did? I brought my hands down and I left the barbell with him and the pressure was off. Now I knew that there were 6 out there for us. And there's 6 out there for you too. See, the whole business is you go platinum and then take your skill sets and the things you learn and teach other people how to go platinum. And you can help as many as you want in width, personally registered, or down in depth, down there teaching people how to lead and teach. And that's what the business is all about. It's not all about you. Listen, as you progress in the business, you'll get so much recognition. I mean, we walk on stage and you guys are up here cheering and hollering. We're just Danny and Renata from Nightdale. I was a high school push out. Okay? I'm not as smart as a lot of you dudes are. You know, I've met doctors and scientists and engineers in here, and I'm like, man, that's so cool. And you're listening to a high school pushout where my teacher told my friend, my best friend, he said, you need to quit hanging out with Danny because he's never going to amount to anything. He was a straight A student, didn't crack a book. I didn't crack one either, but he made A's and I didn't. Right? And so when you have those things, my 3rd grade teacher, I remember my sister, she had the same teacher, and she would come up, she'd grab my ear and she'd go, your sister could draw circles around you. And I still remember it from the 3rd grade. That's how powerful words are, and people with authority and influence in your life. I still remember it, but I chose to reject that.
But you never had anything that sparked your interest. You didn't have any.
You, baby. I'll be the Italian in the business. Okay. Forget about it. All right. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
No, I said you didn't have anything that interested you enough for you to study, to do anything.
I was practical. I saw teachers who were trying to tell me how to get ahead in life eating out of brown paper sacks in the lunchroom just like I was. Right? And so I'm like, what do you know? Right? And I had a Spanish teacher. She was like maybe 1 year out of college. She was young. She was cute. You know, here I am, 15 years old, taking Spanish. And I'm thinking back then, you know, Spanish speaking was not, you know, it wasn't that much in, you know, in America. And I'm like, what am I going to need this for? You know, and so I was just.
Now you regret it.
Now I wish I could. In fact, up here, it says something about, I think that's in Spanish, and I have no clue what it's saying. So I don't really know what they're trying to tell me. Okay. Anyway, but the thing is I remember I'd be sitting in the back of the class, and finally she said, our first semester, I got an F. And I went to her and I said, listen, I said, I've never failed anything. Because by that point in the 6th grade, I figured out where my sister's term papers and book reports were in our attic. And I would go up every time I needed to turn one up, and I would get one down, and I would put a few mistakes in it so the teacher would think I did it. And it was a game to me to see if I could get by. I didn't crack a book since the 6th grade. And so I was up there, and I said, listen, I've never failed anything. But see, my dad was a car salesman, and so he'd already taught me the art of the deal, you know. And so I said, listen, I said, if you'll just pass me out of here, I promise I won't take Spanish too. She said, you promise? I said, yes. She said, okay, just quit cutting up. I'll get you through here. I said, good deal. Final exam, it says, illustrate these sentences in Spanish. And it would say like, see Jack run. I said, I can illustrate that. I drew a picture of a little dude with a sombrero on running. Passed. I graduated from Spanish 1. Woo-hoo! I can say, uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, siete, ocho, nueve, diez. Ho! I'm just glad I learned how to count at least to 6 and beyond. There's a tip, okay? And so the thing is that, listen, here's what I saw. When I saw this business for the first time in my life, I saw something I wanted to do. It wasn't that I was not capable of learning or that we weren't capable of learning. It's the first time we ever saw something we wanted to study and be students at.
And it wasn't really that you liked everything you had to do.
I hated building a business. I didn't like talking to strangers. You just go, well, you were a car salesman. Yeah, when they came in the dealership, they were already coming in for a purpose. And I just had to be nice to people and show them the benefits of the car and find the right one. And I would treat them right and was top salesman because I treated people like I'd want to be treated. But talking to somebody in public, Larry had to teach me how to break the ice and talk to people. We'd go to eat lunch and we'd be at a little buffet thing. And he'd start talking to the guy next to him. Hey, you work around here? Yeah, I work right down the street. You eat here a lot? Da-da-da-da. Oh, your family from here? And he would be carrying on a conversation. By the time we got to the table, I'd say, you interrogated that guy like the FBI. He said, Danny, I'm just being friendly. He said, I may never talk to him about the business, but it doesn't hurt to make friends and be in practice. And who knows, we may connect. And so I had to try to start talking to people. And
you talked to everyone.
What?
You talked to everyone.
I talked to everything that moved.
Because you were going to stay in practice.
I wanted to stay in practice, and we didn't understand filtering back then. They just said, throw mud up on the wall and see what sticks. So I was throwing a lot of mud up on the wall, okay? No filter. I love vetting people so you don't waste time and money. It's awesome. But that's not what we were taught. But I started talking to people. I would see somebody, I'd say, hi. And they would go, hi, and I would just keep right on walking. You know how you make eye contact with somebody and then you kind of turn your head like, no, I didn't see you, right? Okay. Now, I graduated to, hi, how you doing? And I wouldn't even stick around to hear their response. And I had to overcome that. But you know what? I was not going to let my fear of talking to people keep me away from taking care of my wife and being the hero for my kids one day. Because, see, I knew I'd never see that person again, but I was going to see her for the rest of my life. And I was going to set the example for my kids. And I was not going to let the fear of what somebody thought or the intimidation that is trying to throw on us about not talking to people hold me back from accomplishing all that I was destined to do, right?
Right.
We got to
really quick before we end, just to let you know, we were in qualification and Danny.
That's when you go platinum and you got 6 people qualifying platinum.
Yeah. Okay. So we were at this point in our business and Danny and the guys were out riding motorcycles and he was riding too fast and flew into a tree. So he had helmet, pads, everything on. And one of the guys on our team came by the house and said, hey, have you heard from Danny?
Speaking of mine.
And I said, no. He said, well, they just called me from the church and said to pray. And I'm like, well, that definitely isn't good. I mean, it's good that they did that, but not good that
They didn't call you, they called
they called. Yeah, they didn't call me. So he took me to the hospital. Danny was in emergency room. When I finally got to see him, his neck was probably this
wide
wide.
from my shoulders.
Yes. And you could tell where blood had been coming out of his ears and his mouth and everything. And they said, we're just going to keep him in ICU for 24 hours. So when I got there the next morning, they had put him in a coma, and he was in that coma for 8 days, in the hospital for 12. They told me he would not walk out without going to rehabilitation, that he'd have to go to rehabilitation and everything. And exactly 2 weeks after he was carried into the hospital, he walked out of the hospital. So, that's one of those things I learned in the business too. How do you eat an elephant? I mean, because every day wasn't beautiful. Every day was not the greatest. But how do you eat an elephant? You eat him one bite at a time. And I knew that I knew what Danny had been putting in his heart, what he had been growing himself in, that he knew that God had this. And I had comfort in that. And he walked out. And, it took a few months of healing and getting over that, but we saw God answer prayer. And he has in so many areas of our life. And he's always been there and taken us wherever we needed to go.
That's right. And, we had helped 3 people reach platinum at that point. We had 6 people, actually 7 people qualifying at that point. Here's the resiliency of the business. We finished qualification at a higher level, okay? Not typical, but we had got our base in place, and so things could happen because we didn't want to be typical. We were willing to work the business hard so that we could have the long-term reward. You do what you want to do. I didn't want to finish second, right? And so we had 7 over, and then went into the hospital, had the accident. We not only finished qualification, and the people we were helping finish qualification, while I was in recovery, we broke 3 more personal platinums. Okay. And so our income went along with the pay program. But, the fact is, it was all the things that we learned and the legs that we helped go platinum. It wasn't always the same people, but it was depth out of those legs that we put in on the way to platinum. Hear what I'm saying? It wasn't always the people we personally registered. They came and went, many of them. But because we built depth to secure the legs and help them register people, somebody was always rising up. And so the achievements that we've achieved, okay, have been out of what happened going platinum. And going platinum, we learned the difference between hope and faith. And that carried over into other areas of our life, not just building the business, but, I got hit with COVID back in 2021. It was another near-death experience. And I thank the Lord for every day, because the things we learned, we stood on those principles and on those promises and provision. And I stand here before you today. Just in July of this year, she just had a stroke. And you'd never know it today. And but they said that where she had a stroke on the right rear part of her brain, the girl that was the head of the cardiac wing on the hospital was the best friend of Stacy's, our middle daughter, growing up from elementary school through high school. And she came in, she went in on Monday, she was released on Friday. She had full movement, everything, speech not slurred, anything. And she said, I don't know if anybody's told you all this. She said, but when people I've been here 12 years, and 90% of the people who have a stroke on that part of their brain, their whole left side is done for the rest of their life. Raise their arm, it just flops. And she said, the fact that she's walking out of here today, totally restored, she said, is nothing short of a miracle. And so I just thank the Lord for that, and like 5 days after that, Sydney, our youngest daughter, was driving down this curvy road going to our house, and a kid, 16 years old, just got his license. He was testing his abilities out, and he was going 70 to 80 miles an hour, came across the lane, and right at the last fraction of a second, she just jerked her car, and he hit her right behind the driver's door and just ripped the whole back end of the car off, and she spun around, and his car just went tumbling down the road another 100 yards like a NASCAR wreck. Both of them walked away, not a scratch on them. And so I just know that there's a source, a higher source that promises and provides if we trust him. And we give him the honor and the glory today. And all the things that we've accomplished are things that we learn, life lessons and about faith and how to take our stand on those promises and how to pray and how to believe and how to encourage people. And we learn those things on the way to platinum. And if you're sitting here tonight and your list of names, your A list, the people that you know really well, your B list who are acquaintances, if you didn't register a single one of them, because we didn't, we just saw enough in that first weekend. We said, we're doing this. And when our friends didn't understand, and in fact, the first friend that we talked to, she called all of our circle of friends and said, Danny and Renata are doing Amway. And so if they call you, that's what they're calling you about. And I would call people up and I'd go, hey, this is Danny. And hey, Danny, we heard what you're doing. Click, and hang up in my face. And I was
Well, Larry
like,
told you from the beginning you didn't have any friends.
yeah, Larry told me to be. I said, I got a lot of friends that'll do this. And Larry said, you don't have any friends. I was like, that's kind of rude, isn't it? He goes, you don't, Danny. He said, friendship is forged on somebody doing things together. He said, friendship is forged on trying to do something together, a common interest, and you got each other's back and you're in the foxhole. He said, all you've got is acquaintances because you went to school with them or you grew up in the neighborhood or whatever. He said, you'll find out who your friends are. So literally in the first couple of weeks, I found out who my friends were. And one of the concerns she had when first I came home telling her we're going to do this, she said, what will people think? And I said, well, how many of them are going to pay our bills if something happens to me? And I said, if they don't like me because of what I choose to do that's honest and legal to support my family, they're the one with the problem. I'll find new friends. And we have. I would have been willing to help them, and I would still be willing to help them today. Family members, friends, they all said no. But here's what we saw. We saw a business that we felt like we could do. It didn't take a certain IQ or education. It took guts. And I said, I can gut anything out. And I said, I'm going to do this. And she backed me. And we went out and did it. And my word of encouragement tonight is you got what it takes or you wouldn't be sitting here. You got what it takes or you wouldn't got it. You saw the plan. You got what it takes. And don't you ever let a family member, a friend, a pastor, or anybody who's not doing this business try to steal this thing from you, because this is your opportunity to go out and impact people's lives and other families and be remembered long after you are gone. I wish we had more time to talk to you and tell you all the things that happened, because our message is a message of hope. I know you can do it because I know where we came from. And we have been so blessed, and thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to speak to you and hopefully put some encouragement in your life tonight. Thank you so much for the opportunity. God bless you. Good night.
For the calendar year 20